Everybody started asking why. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 149 of the Shower Podcast, the podcast where I'm in Thailand and you do you. I'm your host, Chip, and first of all, I am so sorry about the episode numbering on the first episode of this mini-series. Unfortunately, I considered wrong when I would have aired this, and I said the wrong number. But fortunately, with the thumbnail and the title, I have adjusted it, but still, I'm sorry if it was confusing. So, today we're leaping forward in time to an age when wisdom wasn't just whispered around campfires, it was debated in marketplaces, thought in temples, and shared across vast empires. Before we start, as usual, if you end up liking this episode and like overall the idea of the Shower Podcast, leaving a like and a subscribe really help a lot. It's just one click, but they really make the difference. Now, this was the Age of Sages, a period often called the Axial Age, if you remember from the previous episode. Trust me, this is where things get interesting. Now, let's set the scene. It's around 800 to 200 before Christ, and across different parts of the world at the same time, Greece, India, China, Persia, great thinkers start to emerge. Almost as if the world collectively decided, hey, it's time we figure out how to live better. It's one of those moments in history that makes you wonder, was something in the water? Because it's uncanny how in these different regions, at roughly the same time, people started asking some really big questions like, what makes a good life? What is a virtue? How should we treat each other? Let's start with ancient Greece because, well, who doesn't love a good philosophical debate? As I said, around the 5th century before Christ, Socrates pops onto the scene walking through Athens, engaging strangers with his now famous Socratic method, asking questions that made people think deeply, often uncomfortably. Socrates believed that in the examined life, that we should constantly question our beliefs, actions, and motivations. He said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Imagine that. At a time when most people were focused on survival and social status, here's a guy saying, wait, but what's the point of all of this if we don't reflect? Then there's his student, Plato, who founded the Academy, arguably the first university in Western history. Plato's dialogues introduced the idea of striving for the ideal forms, truth, beauty, justice. It was like he was saying, sure, life's messy, but there's a higher standard we should aim for. And Plato's students, Aristotle, took it further. He argued that the goal of life was eudaimonia, or human flourishing. How do you get there? By cultivating virtues like courage, temperance, and wisdom. Aristotle wasn't about sitting around pondering abstract ideals. He believed in practical action, in forming good habits through deliberate practice. Sounds familiar? It's like the original blueprint for modern self-discipline. This wasn't just happening in Greece, though. Over in China, around the same period, Confucius was teaching about ren, benevolence, and li, proper conduct. He wasn't talking about meditating on mountaintops. He was all about how to live harmoniously within society. Confucius believed that a good society starts with good individuals, people who respect their family, fulfill their duties, and cultivate inner virtues. He said, the strength of a nation derives from the integrity of the home. And his teachings became the backbone of Chinese culture for over 2,000 years. And while Confucius was organizing society, a more mystical figure, Lao Tzu, was sharing the Tao Te Ching, a text that speaks about the living in harmony with the Tao, the way of nature. Lao Tzu's approach was the opposite of control. It was about letting go, embracing simplicity, and trusting the natural flow of life. He wrote, A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's such a simple idea, but it resonates deeply with anyone who's ever tried to break a bad habit or start something new. Meanwhile, in India, profound spiritual thinkers were also transforming the landscape. Around again, the 5th century before Christ, Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the famous Buddha, was teaching that suffering comes from attachment and that liberation comes through the middle way, a path of balance and mindfulness. The Dhammapada, one of the earliest collections of his teachings, says, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." Imagine hearing that for the first time, realizing that our inner world shapes our reality. And not far from there, Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, was teaching nonviolence, truth, and asceticism. His emphasis on self-discipline and compassion influenced generations, not just in India, but across the world. Even Gandhi, centuries later, drew inspiration from Jain philosophy for his non-violent resistance movement. Let's not forget now also Zoroaster in ancient Persia, who around the 6th century before Christ was introducing ideas of free will and moral dualism in Zoroastrianism. His teachings emphasized the eternal battle between good and evil, and the responsibility of each person to choose the path of asha, truth and order, over druj, falsehood and chaos. It's one of the earliest recorded frameworks for personal responsibility, predating even some of the big names in Western philosophy. What's remarkable is how global this shift was. These thinkers were separated by thousands of miles, with no internet, no instant messaging, and yet they were asking the same profound questions. They were creating blueprints for self-improvement that transcended their own times and places. And here's the thing, they didn't have the distractions we do today. No endless scrolling, no emails. They sat, they thought, they debated, and they wrote. And the wisdom they left behind still speaks to us, even across the centuries. So set the stage with these incredible thinkers, Socrates, Confucius, Buddha, Zoroaster, each laying down frameworks for self-improvement that echoed across civilization. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. These weren't just abstract ideas, they were practical guides to living a better life. Take Aristotle, for example. He didn't just walk and talk about virtues. He argued that we could train ourselves to be virtuous. Just like you might hit the gym to strengthen your body, you could practice habits of courage, patience, or generosity to strengthen your character. His concept of the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies between extremes, makes so much sense, even today. Think about it. Courage isn't being reckless. It's not being a coward. It's the middle path. In a world of extremes, Aristotle's advice to aim for balance feels more relevant than ever. Meanwhile, Confucianism was all about the social side of self-improvement. It wasn't just be a better you. It was be a better you for the sake of the community. Confucius emphasized filial piety, respect for parents and elders, and ritual property, because he believed that a harmonious society starts with harmonious families. Imagine that, a philosopher telling you that doing the dishes and being polite to your grandma are essential for world peace. It's charming and profound at the same time. And then there's Lao Tzu, whose teachings in the Tao Te Ching are so beautifully paradoxical. He said things like, "He who conquers others is strong. He who conquers himself is mighty." Now, tell me that doesn't hit deep. The idea that real strength isn't about domination, but about self-mastery, that's really timeless wisdom. And in a world obsessed with external success, even back then, Lao Tzu reminds us to look inward, to align with the natural flow of life, and to find peace in simplicity. Going back to India, Buddha's middle way wasn't just philosophy, it was a practical path. He outlined the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, and so on. It's like an ancient checklist for ethical living and mental clarity. And it wasn't reserved for monks, anyone could practice it. His emphasis on mindfulness and compassion has influenced modern practices from therapy to leadership training. And finally, Zoroastrianism gave us this profound idea of moral responsibility. Zoroaster thought that each person has a role to play in the cosmic struggle between good and evil. The phrase, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, encapsulates his entire philosophy. It's simple, actionable, and honestly, a mantra we could all use today. Whether we're making big life decisions or just trying to navigate daily interactions, the idea that our choices matter is both empowering and humbling. Now, what's really interesting is how these philosophies didn't stay locked in temples or schools. They started spreading, being adapted, and became the foundation of whole cultures. For instance, Confucian values shaped Chinese governance and education for centuries, influencing neighbor countries like Korea and Japan. The Buddhist emphasis on compassion and detachment traveled across Asia, merging with the local traditions to create unique expressions like Zen in Japan or Tibetan Buddhism. Back to our neighbors, Greek philosophy, preserved and expanded upon by Islamic scholars like Al-Farabi, and eventually fueled by the European Renaissance. These ideas were seeds planted thousands of years ago that continue to bloom today. Really, think about that. These ancient sages weren't just armchair philosophers. They were world builders. Their ideas shaped laws, inspired leaders, and gave ordinary people tools to navigate life's challenges. Even now, when we talk about resilience, critical thinking, or mindfulness, we're echoing their teachings. It's like we're all part of this unbroken conversation that started millennia ago. And you know what I found humbling? These thinkers often lived in turbulent times, wars, social upheaval, personal hardship. Socrates was executed for corrupting the youth. Confucius faced political exile. Buddha left behind a life of luxury to seek enlightenment. They weren't ivory tower academics. They were people who wrestled with life's messiness and still find a way to distill it into wisdom. It makes me think that maybe our own struggles, whether it's burnout, anxiety, or just trying to find our purpose, aren't so different. The human condition, at its core, hasn't changed that much. So, what can we take from all of this? Well, first, that the quest for self-improvement is universal. Across cultures and centuries, we've all grappled with the same big questions. How do I live well? How do I find balance? How do I contribute to something bigger than myself? And second, that the answers aren't always flashy or complicated. Sometimes it's about practicing small virtues every day, like Aristotle suggested. Sometimes it's about aligning to the natural flow of things, like Lao Tzu advised. And finally, sometimes it's about embracing compassion and mindfulness, as Buddha thought. As we wrap up this episode, here's a thought that you can carry with you. The wisdom of the ages isn't locked in books or temples. It's right here in how we live each day. Whether we're stuck in traffic, juggling deadlines, or just trying to be kinder to ourselves, we're part of this ancient journey. That's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Well, next time we'll move into the medieval world, a time when self-improvement took a new dimension with the rise of spiritual traditions, codes of honor, and the first universities. I don't want to spoil it too much, so I will stop it here for today. And yeah, as always, if you ended up liking this episode, leaving a like and a subscribe really help. Let me know in the comments. Any kind of feedback is really well appreciated. I have to say I really enjoy doing this more narrated style of episodes. And yeah, what else? As usual, stay consistent, stay resilient, and see you tomorrow.